Hello friends, welcome to Self-Less Study. I'm Dr. Raj, your online learning partner. This is part 2 of the last lesson. So here we will discuss the chapter in detail. It will be a short summary of the story. This is the story told in the first person through the eyes of a little boy called little Franz. He's symbolic of France, the whole country itself. So he's a boy who is to go to school. That day he started for the school a bit late. Maybe these boys feel reluctant in the morning, so he started for the school late, and he was very afraid that his teacher will scold him, particularly because he had been given some work on the rules of grammar called participles, and he was supposed to remember them. So Franz was very reluctant in going to the school because he has not remembered those lessons. He didn't know anything about that. So for a moment he thought that he'll not go to school and spend time out of doors somewhere. That those days, maybe going to school, people were not that much careful whether the child has given attendance to the school or not. So he thought that he should spend all the time of the school out of doors, and at the end of the day he'll go back to his school. So he thought of running away and spend the time out of doors. Things were more beautiful outside. The birds were chirping at the edge of the woods, and the open field. The Prussian soldiers, these soldiers, I just talked about the Prussian soldiers, soldiers of Germany, uh, Poland, Austria. These soldiers were doing practice because that area of France was captured by those Prussian soldiers. So they were doing their drill practice open, in their open ground at the back of the sawmill. So and that was very interesting thing to look at. So he thought that he will go and see those soldiers doing drill practice. They were much more tempting than the rule of participles. These things were interesting, and moreover teacher will not be scolding him in the school. So he thought of spending time out of doors, but then he did not go there, and he continued going to the school. When he was passing, going to the school, he passed in front of the town hall that was there, and he saw that there was a crowd in front of the bulletin board that was a part of the town hall. For last 2 years, when these Franco-Prussian war started, that board was the center, or that town hall was the center of all the information, and from that bulletin board all different kind of news used to come there. So mostly the news of the lost battles, the drafts that were sent from the battlefield, or order from commanding officers, all these things, mostly bad news, used to come from that bulletin board. So while Franz was passing, a lot of people were gathered around that bulletin board. So the small boy Franz was thinking, what can be the matter today? Then he hurried, because he was getting late for the school. He hurried to the school as fast as he could, and when he was about to run, from his area there was a blacksmith. His name was Watcher. That person was there with his apprentice. He was reading the news from the bulletin board. He called after me, "Don't go so fast, Bob. You'll get to your school in plenty of time." Of course, that was ironic, because French was already late. So this Watcher was making fun of him. The boy the boy thought that he was making fun of me, and he reached the school out of breath, almost kept on running to the school. Now we'll discuss about the school scene. Generally, when the school used to begin, a normal school days, you understand, lots of hustle and bustle, lots of noise was heard outside in the street. If the school is not very disciplined, you can listen to the noise outside, the opening and closing of desks. Then children are there who is reading out the lesson in groups very loudly. They are putting their hands over their ears so that they can understand better. Teacher is there moving around in the class. Sometimes he raps the ruler on the table with a bang. These are some of the noises that could be heard when your normal school day begins, and that was your normal scene in that school also. But that day things were very different. It was like a Sunday morning. The whole school was quiet, like a Sunday morning. On Sundays you don't have a school, and everything is quiet and silent. So that the school looked like a Sunday morning that day. He reached to the classroom. The boy, little Franz, reached the classroom, and through the window he saw that his classmates were already seated, and the teacher was walking up and down, and he was keeping a ruler under his arm. So he thought, what may be the matter now? Why, he was very, other days he could depend on the noise and go and sit over there, but that day he was thinking, why this whole classroom is, settle and all, and he was very frightened to go in front of everyone and sit in the class. uh, Nothing happened. He thought that he'll be scolded by the teacher, but nothing happened. The teacher saw him and said to him kindly, "Go to your place quickly, little Franz. We're beginning without you." He jumped over the bench and sat down at his desk. And he was a bit frightened, so he took some time to get settled, to get over his fear. And then when he looked, he saw some changes that took place. The first change he saw was that the teacher was wearing a beautiful green coat, his frilled shirt, a little black silk cap, all embroidered. Embroidery was done on that. And he used to wear that dress only on special days, maybe like on inspection days or on prize giving days, on annual days and all. The whole thing seemed strange and solemn and calm and peaceful. But another thing that surprised him was that on the back benches, which were mostly unoccupied other days, nobody used to sit on them. Those last benches on those last benches, some villagers were sitting quietly, like the students. And his old Hauser was also sitting over there. He had a three-cornered hat. He was sitting over there. Then former old mayor of the town was sitting. Old past, former postmaster was sitting over there. Several dignitaries, some several renowned people of that area was sitting over there, and everyone was sad. They had brought some books also, like old primary book he has brought. The book was thumbed at the edge. It was used a lot of time. So in the corner, the top corner, the edge got folded, so it was thumbed at the edges. And he was holding that book, and he was reading the book with spectacles. Then he was wondering why these people are sitting, why they are reading books and all, what has happened, why they are sad and all. Suddenly the teacher got up and he said, "My children, this is the last lesson I shall give you. The order has come from Berlin to teach only German in the schools of Alsace and Lorraine. The new master comes tomorrow. This is your last French lesson. I want you to be very attentive." What a thunderclap these words were to me. Little Franz was very surprised. Last French lesson? Come on, I don't know anything about that, and that must be the thing. Last class, that must be the news that they had put on the bulletin board. That's why people were, gathered around that bulletin board. So why last French lesson? I don't know anything about that. I spend my time, instead of learning my lessons, I spend my time looking after the eggs of the birds or doing sliding and all. He never paid attention to the studies, and now these books he'll not be able to study on. Earlier, these books were heavy to carry, the grammar, the history of science, all those things are not going to be used. Now he is not going to study his own language, which is the French language, any longer. For a moment, he forgot everything about the cranky ruler, about how angry the teacher was. Everything he forgot, and just remembered that he's not going to study his own language. And then he remembered that it's because the teacher has got a transfer. That's why the teacher was wearing his special clothes, his Sunday clothes. And then he understood why those villagers were also sitting in those back benches, because they were also very sorry that they had not come to the school, they have not learned their language, and they also want to thank the teacher for 40 years of his faithful service. You should understand that teacher had been there for last 40 years, and suddenly he got a transfer. So how bad he must be feeling. While the boy was thinking all this, his name was called, and the teacher asked him to recite the rules of the participles. Franz tried to speak out to tell the rules, but he has not learned anything. So he got mixed up in the very few beginning sentences, and then he kept standing over there. He could not look up. His heart was beating fast. The teacher said, "I won't scold you, little Franz. You must feel bad enough. See how it is. Every day we have said to ourselves, 'Bah, I have plenty of time. I'll learn it tomorrow.' And now you see where we have come out. Ah, that's the great trouble with Alsace. She puts off learning till tomorrow. Now these fellows out there will have the right to say to you, 'How is it? You pretend to be Frenchmen?' and yet you can neither speak nor write your own language. But you're not the worst, poor little Franz. We have all a great deal to reproach ourselves with. So this way, the teacher said that the boy was not only responsible. The area in that area, people do not pay much attention to the learning. They postpone things for tomorrow, and if they do not learn their own language, those soldiers out there, they can tell them, you prepare you or you say that you are a Frenchman and you cannot even your own language. How come you are a Frenchman? Because language is identity. Here it comes language identity. If you cannot speak your own language, it means that you do not belong to that area. He says that your parents were not anxious enough to have you learn. So he holds that there are three kind of people who are responsible. It's not only the boys who are responsible for not learning. The parents are also responsible, because instead of sending their children to the school, they send them to the farm so that they can earn some more money. The children had been neglecting us, and even the teacher himself was responsible, because instead of sending the children, or instead of teaching the children, whenever he find time, he send the children to water the flowers, or whenever he want to go for fishing, he said, okay, today it's a holiday. So teacher also didn't take the lesson seriously, or with greater patience he didn't explain it. That's why teacher is also to be blamed. So the children for not neglecting it, not learning it, the parents for sending their wards to the fields or to the farm instead of sending them to the school, and the teacher for ignoring the classes. These three people are responsible for non-learning of French language in that area. And then from one to another, he kept on explaining everything, saying that how French is the most beautiful, most logical, and clearest language of the world. He said that the language is so good that they must guard it and they must not forget it, because if you lose your language, it appears as if you lose your nationalism, you become a slave. But if you hold fast to your language, you do not lose your language. These people will get fed up, these soldiers will get fed up if you do not speak their language, and one day they'll leave. So if you hold fast to your language, it is as if you have a key to your prison. And then he talked about many things. That day he opened a grammar book and read us the lesson. The boy was very surprised, little Franz was very surprised that he could understand everything that was taught to him that day. Maybe because the teacher also explained it with great patience, or the boy was very careful, that the little Franz was very careful that day in listening to the lesson. That's why he was able to understand everything. It also appeared as if the teacher, before the teacher leaves that area, he wants to give everything that he had to the children. That's why he explained everything with great patience. They had a lesson in grammar, then they had a lesson in writing, then the teacher brought new copies for them, and he gave a small copies to everyone. And he asked, the teacher asked all the children to write in beautiful round handwriting, France Alsace, France Alsace. It appeared as if those tiny copies look like tiny flags, small flags, and those flags are tied with a small a small little pole to every desk, and the whole area was full of patriotic feeling, like the feelings that you have on 25th 26th of January or 15th of August. That kind of patriotic feeling was there in the whole classroom. The whole classroom was full of patriotic feeling, and people were writing France Alsace, their country's name and their district's name. uh, uh, some other sound was there on the roof. Some pigeons were cooing, and some beetles also flew in, but nobody paid any attention to them. The whole noise that was heard in that room was scratching of pens on papers. But the boy, little Franz, was distracted a bit, and he was thinking, when the pigeons were going, will they make them sing in German, even the pigeons? See, look at the fear that the boy had. He thought that they can make human beings learn, this German language instead of French. But will that impact be carried, that imposition of language be carried as far as to the birds also, to the animals also? Will they also be trained in that language? So this is the fear that little Franz has. Whenever he looked up, he saw that the teacher was sitting motionless in the chair and looking one thing or other, as if he wanted to, have everything in his memory. He wanted to look at them for the last time, because he was leaving that place. He had served that place for 40 years, and he wanted to treasure it. Only the things that have changed in the 40 years is that the benches just have grown, warm. It went warm. Those worn out and all, they're smooth. He planted some vines. They have become very bigger. The trees have become bigger. He wanted to, remember everything over there. And you see how bad he might be feeling when his sister was packing up the things on the trunks and all on the roof on the first floor where he used to live. But anyway, he had the courage to hear every lesson to the last. After the writing, they had a class in history, and then these babies had language classes where they were chanting ba, baby, bobu, and all. And so finally, they had these classes. Old Hauser was also reading out some letters and all, and he was speaking with a funny language and so sad that he was almost crying. He looked very funny. The boy Franz wanted to laugh, but he could not laugh. He remembers every bit of that lesson. How well he remembers that lesson, that last lesson. And that was the time. It was 12 o'clock. First the church clock said 12, and then Angelus is the bell that is sounded from the church. So all these indicated that it was 12 o'clock. And then at the same time, the trumpets of the Prussian soldiers, they were coming back from the drilling. They sounded under the window. That was time for the teacher to go. So teacher stood up. He was very pale. He was very, looked very, very tired, or very, silent, very sad. He said, and he stood and started saying, "My friends," he said. He wanted to say something, but something choked his heart. He became very, very emotional. He could not continue. He turned to the blackboard, and instead of speaking his words, he took a piece of chalk. And he wrote as big as he could. The words that he wrote were in French language. It was written "Vive la France," which means "Long live France." And that is full of patriotic feeling. And then he stopped speaking anything, leaned against the wall as if to take support, otherwise you'd have fallen. And then he made a gesture with his hand. "The school is dismissed, you may go." So this is the lesson in brief. In the next video we'll discuss on the points related, major points of the story, and then we'll have questions in the last video. Thank you very much.